Am I the idiot for looking at my sister's medical records and discovering she's faking a pregnancy to get wedding money from our parents? Throwaway for obvious reasons. I, female 28, am honestly so stressed out right now, and I don't know what to do. This is probably going to be super long, sorry in advance. I'm still shaking while typing this. So basically, I have a younger sister, Chelsea, female 25, who has always been the princess of our family. I don't mean that in a mean way, well, maybe a little, but she's just always been the one who gets what she wants, while I've always been the responsible one. Like, I'm not perfect or anything, but I've always tried to be careful with money and think about the future and stuff. I work as a medical office administrator at this healthcare network in our city, which means I rotate between different departments and clinics as needed. It's not the most exciting job, but it pays the bills, and I'm good at it. My sister, well, she's never really held down a steady job for more than like 8 months at a time. She's currently working at this boutique downtown that sells overpriced clothes that she spends half her paycheck on. For some background, our parents are really hardworking people. Dad's a construction foreman, and mom's an elementary school teacher. They're not rich by any means, but they've always been super responsible with money. When we were kids, they started what they called the Daughters Fund. Basically, they saved about $80K total to split between me and Chelsea for important life stuff like college, down payments on houses, or emergencies. I used some of my half for my associate's degree a few years ago, but I've been saving the rest because I really want to buy a house someday. Probably impossible in this market, but whatever. Chelsea has barely touched hers because our parents keep bailing her out of credit card debt. They don't think I know about this, but I overheard them arguing about it last Christmas. It's always been this weird tension in our family that nobody talks about. Anyway, so Chelsea met this guy Steve about a year and a half ago at our friend Jake's birthday party. Steve seems nice enough, kind of quiet, but his family has money. Like, not crazy rich, but definitely more well off than our family. I think this made Chelsea feel insecure or something, because ever since they started dating, she's been obsessed with appearances and keeping up with his friends and family. They got engaged 3 months ago, and oh my freaking God, Chelsea immediately went into full bridezilla mode. She started planning this ridiculously extravagant wedding with like custom everything and a venue that costs more than my yearly salary. I mean, good for her, I guess, but I kept wondering how they were going to pay for all this. So about 7 weeks ago, we're all at Sunday dinner at our parents' house. We do this like twice a month, and Mom brings up the wedding budget. She's trying to be gentle about it, but basically saying maybe Chelsea should consider scaling back a little because the costs were getting out of control. Chelsea gets this look on her face. I've seen this look since we were kids. It means she's about to manipulate the situation. Then she announced that she and Steve were pregnant 8 weeks along. Mom literally gasped and started crying. Dad got all choked up, and there was this whole emotional scene. I was surprised too, but something felt off. Chelsea specifically mentioned that Dr. Isabel Garcia at River Valley Women's Clinic had confirmed it the week before, which immediately caught my attention because I sometimes fill in at that clinic for admin work. Chelsea then went on about needing to move the wedding up before she started showing and wanting to give their baby beautiful wedding memories, which makes no sense since the baby won't remember anything but whatever. And suddenly, my parents agreed she could have her dream wedding and gave her the entire remaining portion of her fund, 40 keelers for it. After that, I started noticing weird things. Like 2 weeks after the announcement, at her engagement party, Chelsea was drinking what looked exactly like champagne. When I asked her about it, she claimed it was just sparkling cider. But later, I literally saw the bartender mixing her drink with alcohol. When she noticed me watching, she suddenly changed the subject to wedding flowers or something. I casually asked how her morning sickness was going, and she gave the vaguest answers ever. Then a few minutes later told someone else a completely different story about how sick she was. When I asked when her next doctor's appointment was, she got all defensive and asked why I was so obsessed with her pregnancy. The weirdest part was when I overheard her and Steve talking. She literally pulled him away when I was getting too curious, and I heard her whispering that I was getting suspicious. Steve suggested maybe telling the truth, but Chelsea insisted it was too late for that. I was getting really worried because my parents had already put down non-refundable deposits on this crazy expensive venue and caterer. Dad's 58 and Mom's 56, and they should be focusing on retirement, not spending their savings on a wedding based on a lie. Then last week, by complete coincidence, I swear, I got assigned to work at Dr. Garcia's office for 3 days. I was filing some patient records and came across Chelsea's chart. I know I shouldn't have looked. I know it was wrong and against HIPAA and I could get fired or worse, but I was so worried about my parents that I just did it. Guys, the chart showed that Chelsea had specifically asked Dr. Garcia to document that she wasn't pregnant and had never been pregnant. There were actual notes about Chelsea requesting this documentation for family reasons. I felt really nauseous, like literally thought I was going to throw up right there in the filing room. That evening, I went straight to Chelsea's apartment. I didn't even call first because I knew she'd make up an excuse not to see me. She was annoyed when she opened the door and asked what I was doing there since she was about to go out. I tried to stay calm and just asked about the pregnancy and how she was feeling. She launched into this elaborate story about her symptoms and appointments and even mentioned some made-up conversation with Dr. Garcia. Finally, I just told her I knew she wasn't pregnant because I'd seen her medical records at work that day. She looked shocked and like she was going to pass out. First, she tried to deny it. Then she got furious and told me to get out. I refused to leave until we talked about it. She eventually broke down and admitted everything. She confessed that she and Steve wanted a dream wedding, but couldn't afford it. And she knew our parents wouldn't give her the money unless there was a good reason. She actually had the nerve to say our parents owed her this wedding and that it was a victimless crime because they were going to give her that money eventually anyway. When I told her I was going to tell our parents, she threatened to report me for violating HIPAA. She warned that I'd lose my job and possibly face charges, asking if it was worth it. So now I'm completely stuck. If I tell my parents, I could lose my job and maybe worse. If I don't tell them, they're going to spend $40,000 on a wedding based on a complete lie, and they might even go into debt for additional expenses that keep coming up. I love my sister, but this is beyond messed up, and I feel terrible for looking at her medical records, even though that's how I found out the truth. What the hell am I supposed to do now? Edit. Wow, I wasn't expecting so many responses. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, I realize I violated HIPAA and could face serious consequences. I'm not trying to minimize that. I know what I did was wrong. 2. Some people are asking if Steve knows the truth. Based on that conversation I overheard, I think he does know and is uncomfortable with the lie, but is going along with it for now. 3. For those suggesting I anonymously tell my parents, Chelsea would 100% know it was me since I'm the only one who knows besides her and Steve. 4. My parents definitely can't comfortably afford this wedding. The $40 is literally all they have left for Chelsea in the daughter's fund. And I know Chelsea is already asking for more for things like her dress and honeymoon. 5. No, this isn't the first time Chelsea has lied to get what she wants. When we were kids, she once broke Mom's favorite vase and convinced everyone I did it. I was grounded for a month. This is just like a million times worse version of the same pattern. Now for the first update. Okay, so wow. Thanks to everyone who commented on my post yesterday. It's been about 2 weeks since I confronted Chelsea about the fake pregnancy, and I've barely slept since then. Like, I'm talking maybe 3 to 4 hours a night because I keep thinking about my parents potentially going into debt for a lie and Chelsea's threats to report me for the HIPAA violation, which, yes, I know was wrong. I don't need more people telling me that. So after reading all your comments, I decided to try talking with Chelsea one more time before doing anything drastic. I texted her asking if we could meet at this cafe we used to go to with our grandmother when we were kids. She agreed to meet me yesterday. I got there early and got us both our usual drinks. When she showed up, she sat down. I tried really hard to stay calm. I told her I knew she wanted a beautiful wedding, but there had to be a way to do it without lying about a pregnancy. She told me I didn't understand what it was like, and that I was happy living in my crappy apartment with my boring job. Side note, my apartment is not crappy. It's actually really cute, and I've put a lot of work into it, but whatever. I told her I could help her find ways to cut costs without sacrificing the things that matter. I even offered to help DIY some of the decorations. You guys, She literally laughed at me. Then she told me the wedding wasn't going to be $75,000 anymore, but around $120,000 when everything was done. I asked her where the extra money was coming from. She said something about Steve's parents contributing. I asked if Steve's parents had actually agreed to pay that much. She admitted they had only agreed to cover the rehearsal dinner, which is maybe $10. I pointed out that was about $70,000 more than what she had. I asked how she was planning to pay for that. She started crying, the fake kind, where she's checking to see if it's working on me. Then she told me she already has $23,000 in credit card debt from deposits and the engagement party and dress shopping. $23,000. I suggested postponing the wedding for a year so she could save up properly. She said she would rather die than postpone the wedding. When I brought up the lying about a pregnancy, she told me no one needed to know the truth except us. After that disaster of a conversation, Chelsea apparently decided I was a threat to her plans. She told our parents that I was jealous of her pregnancy and wedding, and that's why I was being unsupportive. Last Sunday at family dinner, she put on an act about nursery plans and morning sickness remedies. She kept giving me these little smirks whenever our parents weren't looking. It was just like when we were kids and she would do something wrong and blame it on me. My parents started acting really cold toward me. Mom kept saying, I just don't understand what Chelsea's going through, and I should be more supportive. Dad barely talked to me at all. Then 2 days ago, I was helping my dad with something on his email. He's terrible with technology, and I accidentally saw an email from his bank about a second mortgage application. I asked him about it, and he admitted that they were taking out a second mortgage to cover additional wedding expenses Chelsea had requested. Guys, the additional expenses included a $15,000 designer dress and a destination bachelorette weekend for the entire wedding party in Vegas. My dad is 62 and has already delayed retirement once because of money issues. This is insane. I was desperate at this point, so I decided to talk to Steve directly. I texted him asking if we could meet for lunch while Chelsea was at a dress fitting. He agreed. When we met, he was uncomfortable the whole time. I didn't directly mention the pregnancy lie because I wasn't sure if he knew about it or not, but I did ask about their wedding budget. He told me his parents were actually struggling financially right now and were already stretching themselves to pay for the rehearsal dinner. This contradicted what Chelsea had implied about their wealth. When I mentioned the total wedding cost, he looked shocked. So I'm pretty sure Chelsea hasn't been honest with him about that either. About an hour after our lunch, Chelsea called me yelling. She accused me of trying to steal her fiancé and said I was going to pay for this. I tried to explain that I was just concerned about the money situation, but she hung up on me. This past weekend, we had a pre-wedding family gathering at my parents' house. Chelsea's future in-laws were there, plus a few close family friends and the maid of honor. During dinner, Chelsea suddenly started crying and announced that she'd experienced some complications with the pregnancy. Everyone was concerned and asking what happened. She was vague but mentioned needing specialized prenatal care that isn't covered by insurance. I work in medical admin. I know this is complete BS. There's literally no specialized prenatal care that wouldn't be covered by their insurance for a normal pregnancy. It was so obviously a ploy for more money. I watched my dad step away to make a phone call and later overheard him talking to his financial advisor about accessing retirement funds. That was my breaking point. I know what I did was wrong. I'm not trying to justify it, but I was desperate and didn't know what else to do. That night, after everyone left, I logged into the clinic system from home and accessed Chelsea's records again. This time, I took photos of the key documents with my phone. The next evening, we had another family dinner with all the same people, plus a few more of Steve's relatives. As everyone was raising their glasses for a toast to the couple and the baby, I just snapped. I stood up and said I had something important to share. Chelsea tried to interrupt me, looking panicked. I pulled out my phone and showed the screen with her medical records clearly visible. I told everyone Chelsea wasn't pregnant and never was. I showed them records where she specifically asked her doctor to document that she's not pregnant and has never been pregnant, with a note about her requesting this documentation for family reasons. The room went completely silent. Chelsea started yelling that I was violating her privacy. Steve looked shocked, so I guess he didn't know either. My dad kept asking if this was true over and over. My mom collapsed into a chair. Steve's mom asked him if he knew about this. He started stammering, which made it clear he was also deceived. Chelsea ran out crying, and after a minute, Steve followed her. My dad quietly asked everyone except immediate family to leave. I explained everything I knew. The $120,000 wedding budget, the credit card debt, all of it. Eventually, everyone left, including Chelsea and Steve, separately. My parents went to their bedroom without saying a word to me. I went back to my apartment feeling both relieved and terrible at the same time. This morning, I woke up to a text from Chelsea. "Hope you're happy. You've ruined everything. I'm reporting you for HIPAA violations tomorrow. Enjoy being unemployed and possibly facing charges. I'm relieved my parents might be saved from financial disaster, but I feel awful about how everything went down. And I'm terrified about what's going to happen with my job. I know what I did was wrong, but I didn't know what else to do. Edit. A lot of people are asking if I've talked to my parents since the blow-up. Not yet. I've tried calling them several times, but they're not picking up. I'm going to drive over there after work today to check on them. Edit 2. Yes, I realize the irony that I was worried about my parents' financial situation, but might now be unemployed myself. Trust me, the irony is not lost on me. Now for the second update. So I guess this is my final update on the whole situation with my sister. A lot has happened since that night where I exposed Chelsea's fake pregnancy at the family dinner. First of all, thank you to everyone who commented on my last post. I read every comment even though I couldn't respond to all of them because things were happening so fast and I was honestly just trying to keep my head above water. Okay, so the morning after the big reveal, I woke up to 31 missed calls on my phone. I'm not exaggerating. 12 from Chelsea, big surprise. 8 from my parents, 5 from Steve, 3 from my supervisor at work, oh God, 2 from Chelsea's maid of honor Justine, who apparently got dragged into this mess, and 1 from my best friend Megan, who somehow already knew everything. Like, how does news travel that fast? I was literally laying in bed staring at all these notifications feeling like I was gonna throw up. Like, I felt vindicated that the truth was finally out there, but also absolutely terrified about what was going to happen with my job. I had this weird moment where I was like, was it worth it? But then I remembered my dad was about to take out a second mortgage on their house for a fake pregnancy. And yeah, it was worth it. I listened to a few voicemails first. Chelsea's were basically just her screaming and crying and calling me names. But then there was one from my supervisor, Jordan, saying she needed me to come in immediately to discuss a privacy violation. And that's when I really started panicking. But I decided to call my dad first. He picked up right away and sounded tired. We talked for like an hour, I think. I wasn't really keeping track of time. He told me he had already canceled the second mortgage application and was contacting vendors to see which deposits could be refunded. He thanked me for preventing them from making a huge financial mistake, but also said he was really disappointed in both of us, Chelsea for the lying and me for breaking the law to expose her, which, fair enough, I guess. He did mention that Mom was taking it really hard. Apparently, she cried all night and kept saying she didn't understand where she went wrong with Chelsea. That made me feel awful because my mom is literally the sweetest person ever and doesn't deserve any of this. After talking to my dad, I knew I had to face the music at work. So I called my supervisor back and agreed to come in for a meeting right away. That was honestly the longest drive of my life. I kept having these dramatic thoughts like, will I ever work in healthcare again? And can you go to jail for HIPAA violations? When I got to the clinic, it was so awkward. People I normally chat with every day were suddenly super interested in their computer screens. Jordan was waiting for me with this woman I'd never met, who turned out to be the clinic's legal counsel. The meeting was honestly brutal. I immediately admitted what I'd done. There wasn't any point in lying, since Chelsea had already filed a formal complaint with screenshots of me showing her records at the dinner. Yes, she literally took pictures of me exposing her lies. I can't even with her sometimes. The legal counsel explained how serious a HIPAA violation is, and Jordan kept giving me this disappointed look that honestly hurt worse than anything Chelsea could say to me. I tried to explain about my parents potentially going into debt for a fake pregnancy, but I could tell that while they personally understood, professionally, it didn't change anything. Jordan told me that normally this would be immediate termination, but because I had a spotless record for the last 4 years and I came clean immediately, They were giving me another option: 2 weeks unpaid administrative leave, extensive privacy retraining, and a permanent reprimand in my file. They would handle Chelsea's complaint internally rather than escalating it further. I started crying right there in the conference room, like ugly crying. I was so relieved I wasn't getting fired that I couldn't even form words properly. I just kept saying thank you over and over. Jordan looked uncomfortable, but handed me tissues. I think she felt bad for me, even though she couldn't say it. Meanwhile, the whole situation with Chelsea was getting even messier. She and Steve were apparently staying at a hotel because she was too traumatized to be at their apartment. This reminded me so much of when we were 16 and our parents wouldn't buy her a car, so she ran away to her friend Amber's house for 3 days. Chelsea has always been dramatic when she doesn't get her way. 3 days after everything went down, my mom sent a group text asking both of us to come to the house to talk things through. I was dreading it, but knew it had to happen. When I got there, my parents looked exhausted. Chelsea and Steve showed up together, but immediately sat on opposite sides of the living room, which was telling. My dad basically took charge of the whole thing. He told us they were completely restructuring the wedding funds. Instead of giving Chelsea the full $40,000 for the wedding, she would only get $20,000. The other $20,000 would be held in trust for legitimate future needs. My portion would stay untouched, but there would be new rules for accessing any of the money for either of us. Chelsea started to freak out, but then Steve agreed with my dad. He said he thought that was more than fair considering everything that's happened. Chelsea looked shocked, like her face actually froze for a second before she recovered. My mom asked Chelsea why she felt like she needed such an extravagant wedding in the first place. Chelsea actually broke down for real. She admitted she felt insecure about measuring up to Steve's family and was terrified they would look down on her for having a cheap wedding. Her word, not mine. $40 is not cheap for a wedding, but whatever. Steve looked genuinely surprised and said his family would never judge her for that. Chelsea finally admitted that the pregnancy lie started as just a small thing to make sure she got the money, but then it snowballed out of control. She kept having to add more details and complications to keep the story going. She actually seemed remorseful, which is new for her. The meeting ended with my dad establishing new family rules about honesty and financial transparency, which made us feel like we were 10 years old again, but I guess we deserved it. Chelsea and Steve decided to postpone the wedding for at least 6 months while they reassessed their priorities. I wasn't sure if they would even stay together after all this, but apparently they're trying to work it out. Steve actually texted me privately later that day, thanking me for exposing the truth. He said he had no idea about the fake pregnancy and was really troubled that Chelsea would lie to him about something so huge. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. But the craziest part of this whole saga happened 3 weeks later. Chelsea's maid of honor, Justine, who somehow never got the memo about the fake pregnancy being exposed, threw a surprise baby shower. I'm not making this up. My mom called me in a panic, and I rushed over to Justine's apartment. When I got there, the scene was just, oh my freaking God. Chelsea was trapped in a corner of the room surrounded by like 20 women and a pile of baby gifts, looking like she was about to have a nervous breakdown. Then Justine proudly announced that she'd invited Dr. Isabel Garcia as a special surprise guest, the same doctor whose records I looked at. And then Dr. Garcia walked in. Chelsea completely lost it. She started sobbing and confessed everything right there in front of everyone. Steve's mom started asking about returning all the engagement gifts. Some of Chelsea's friends were trying to comfort her, while others were grabbing their purses and leaving. It was absolute chaos. I just stood there watching it all go down. Chelsea eventually turned on me and started screaming that this humiliation was all my fault. I stayed calm and just told her she created this situation herself. Steve finally told her he needed time to think about their relationship. The whole thing was like a scene from a reality show, except it was my actual life. That public humiliation ended up being a turning point for Chelsea. The following week, she started therapy. I finished my privacy retraining and went back to work feeling embarrassed. Everyone was super awkward around me for the first few days, but things eventually went back to normal-ish. I still have that reprimand in my file, but honestly, I'm just grateful I still have a job. My parents decided to use some of the wedding money for family counseling, which has been Uncomfortable, but probably necessary. Our therapist says we have deeply entrenched family dynamics. It's been about 6 months now, and things are still strained but getting better. Chelsea and Steve are still together, but the wedding is on indefinite hold. They're in couples counseling too. My parents are being way more transparent about money with both of us. I still have complicated feelings about the whole thing. Like, I'm glad I protected my parents from financial disaster, but I feel guilty about violating HIPAA. And I still have moments where I'm really angry at Chelsea for putting all of us in this position. I guess the lesson here is that sometimes doing the right thing the wrong way creates its own problems. But I still think exposing the truth was necessary, even if the way I did it wasn't ideal. Edit. Several people are asking if Chelsea ever apologized to me specifically. Kind of. She sent me a text that said, "I'm sorry you felt you had to expose me that way," which isn't really an apology, but it's probably the best I'm going to get from her. Edit 2. For those asking about Steve's family, they were pretty upset about the whole thing, but they're giving Chelsea a second chance. His mom still gives her these looks, though, at family gatherings. Can't really blame her.